Okay, so I'm just starting off by drawing around a roll of tape. You can draw on anything circular, maybe the end of a mug, small plate, etc. And the first thing you're going to do is to draw the top of the bauble in, so the bit that would be attached to the tree. Okay, and as this is a tonal shading exercise for this bauble, you want to start off by shading really, really lightly, so you should be able to see in a second a little bit more clearly on the screen. One thing I am doing is now I've got the shape and I'm happy with the bauble, I'm just rubbing out some of the excess pencil so it's not going to affect the tone. And then really, really gently I'm just going to build up the shading all the way across the bauble. And you want to think about the direction of the light. So the light in my bauble is going to be shining from the right hand side at the top. So at the bottom left, that's going to be the darkest part of the bauble, so that's going to need the most shading. Okay, so at this point you can see small kind of lines where the shading is overlapped. As long as that's light, don't worry, you'll be able to erase that by giving a little smudge with your finger in a second. Okay, make sure to smudge lightly, don't press too hard the paper because you could end up ripping it, especially if you're using printer paper rather than your art book. And you're just going to slowly build up the tone. Now you don't have to press too much harder, but the longer you spend in one place, the darker it will become. Like so, and you're going to want to have that lovely dark shading all at the bottom of your bauble and start to fade out. So once you're happy with your tone and that you think that it fades enough, what you can do is with a rubber, you can just take away some of the excess pencil. Now you can do this around the circumference of your bauble if you've gone out of the lines a little bit, but also in the top right hand corner where my light will be shining, I've just taken away a bit of the excess pencil to create one of those cartoon highlights that you see sometimes in films. Okay, so onto the next bauble. You can use some of the templates that are on the PowerPoint, draw your own, but if you're worried about drawing symmetrically where it's the same on both sides, you can use this trick. So fold a piece of paper in half, draw half your bauble, draw it light until you're happy with it and then go over it to make it darker. And then what you're going to do is you're going to keep the paper folded and you're going to start to cut it out in a second. Okay, what I would always do, especially I've got quite big scissors at home, is cut off the excess paper first so it's out of your way and get as close as you can without being on the line. And then start to maneuver these scissors around. What you'll find is if you cut nearest the handle, so not using the tip of the scissors, you'll usually find you get better control with the scissors, and also it's usually where the scissors are sharper, so you'll get a better effect. So you're going to go around till you've got the whole shape. So you can do any shape with this, hearts, stars, anything you want. It works quite well with intricate shapes because obviously you only have to draw half. And then you open it up and you've got a paper template. Hold it down with one hand, and the trick is you want to keep your pencil as vertical as possible. So hold it as high and tall as you can and just very gently go around the template. until you're happy with the shape. Okay, so what I'm doing here to try and make my bauble look a little bit more realistic and a little bit more three-dimensional, what you'll notice is each of the lines that I'm now drawing on the bauble has got a slight curve to it, okay, and it works in a similar way to parallel lines where they never meet, but they always follow the same sort of pattern. So by using curved lines rather than flat lines on my bauble, I'm going to give the illusion it's a more three-dimensional shape. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill it with lots of lovely Zentangle patterns. So again, you can use the ideas on the PowerPoint or come up with your own. Okay, so to add some contrast to my Zentangle bauble, I'm just going over it with a black fine liner pen. Now you can use anything you've got at home. So you could use a black colour pencil, you could use a normal kind of writing pen. It doesn't have to be black. Another thing you could use if you have them is something like a Sharpie or a black felt pen. You might find for the larger shapes, so for example the curved shapes in the middle of my bauble, that I'll fill those in most likely with a felt pen just because they're thicker, so it'll be a little bit quicker. Okay, so once you're happy with all of your drawing and you've added all the black tones in, what you can do is just gently go over the top of the rubber to erase any pencil lines, just in case you went up the lines when you're drawing in pen. Just be careful when you're smudging if you've used something like a Sharpie when you go over it with the rubber to make sure it doesn't smudge, and then you can add any extra fine details that you feel like you want to add. So especially at the bottom of my bauble, I feel like that's looking a little bit blank, so I'm going to add some details to that in just a second. Okay, so for your final bauble, you're being asked to use colour. So this can be colour pencils, paints, pastels, felts, whatever you have at home. If you don't have colour, don't worry, maybe just try a different kind of variety of tonal shading. So here I'm just drawing a bauble freehand. So again, you could use a template if you want to, you could use a printed out sheet, it's completely up to you. And again, I'm going to try that curved technique that I tried with the second bauble. So each of my lines isn't going to be necessarily flat, it's going to have a curve to it, which will hopefully give the illusion that my bauble is three-dimensional. And once I'm happy with the shape, I'm just going over the top with a rubber just to get rid of any excess pencil, because I don't want that to interfere with any of the colours that I'm going to use in a moment. Okay, so what I'm going to do is on each shape I'm going to do a slightly darker outline and then shade it in and kind of fade it into the middle, and I'm going to be overlapping colours here. So when you're using colour pencils, that's my best trick really, is to combine similar colours together to get that lovely shading effect so that it's not a flat object. So really lightly shading in with the mint green there, and then I've done a darker green on the outside that I can add blue to, purple to, anything that is a similar tone. And what you might want to do, you don't have to, but what you might want to do is choose a contrasting colour. So if I've done quite cold colours here, one option that would look really nice is to now use some warm or hot colours. So in a second I'm going to use some pinks and purples just to add a little bit of contrast against the mint green. Okay, so keep going with the same method as before. So obviously I'm doing darker kind of outside lines and lighter in the middle. And I almost want to kind of fade it out so that the middle part of the bauble, no matter what colour I'm using, is going to be the palest. And that will give that kind of highlight effect that we got in the first bauble with your tonal shading. And I'm just building up with some similar colours again. So some purple, some blue overlapping with the pink. So I'm making lots of lovely tones. I'm not just using the pencil as it is, but I'm creating my own shades too. Okay, so if you've chosen to follow a similar technique, then your bauble should look something like this when it's done. So you'll notice there's lots of lovely highlights in the middle, and I'm just going over the edges of the bauble with a bit of a darker pencil just to bring all of the shapes together. And I'm just adding in a few final touches, keeping the middle of the bauble, the lightest parts is going to create that highlight. And then with a rubber, like with the first bauble, if you want to, you can just go in and just take a little bit of the colour pencil away just to give that lovely highlight colour again. Okay, so the final part is just to create the hook for your bauble. So I'm just choosing similar colours. So I'm going with light blues and dark blues rather than a grey because I want it to be in keeping with my bauble. And I'm just going to go over the top of the bauble surface just to get those last little bits of detail in before I finish my work. Okay, so once you have completed all three baubles, this is the class example, but yours don't have to look like this. We would like you to try one that's a tonal pencil, one that's a Zentangle pen piece, and one that's colour. But again, use what materials you have at home. The idea is that you're reviewing the skills that you would have learnt this term. So tonal shading, applying colour, creating 3D shape. And then once you are finished, could you please upload your finished designs to the assignment on Microsoft Teams, where your teacher will be able to feed back to you. Thank you very much. Stay safe and have a lovely Christmas.